address largely positive, according to this Snap CNN poll. 69% of those surveyed had a positive reaction to the speech. Just 31% viewed his address negatively. Joining us right now, Democratic National Committeeman and former congressional candidate Robert Zimmerman, former Suffolk County Executive, former State Assemblyman Steve Levy. Good to have you both here.
Good to be with you.
Us. All right, Robert, I'll start on your end to hear your reaction to the speech from the president and that poll. There were a couple of polls that had similar numbers showing many Americans liked what they heard.
Let's be clear. My reaction and the reaction you're hearing from most Americans is much bigger than just Democrat versus Republican politics. Because when you cut back the rhetoric and get through the rhetoric, what Donald Trump presented up there was an affront to our Constitution, to our democracy, and America's role in the world. It is stunning to see an American president side with a war criminal, a dictator like Vladimir Putin against the democracies of the world, and call President Zelensky a dictator and blame him for the war that his country is facing in Ukraine. Likewise, his proposals, let's be serious about this. He's not cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. He's trying to cut enough from the budget so he can put through a massive tax cut for the very top tier. I mean, what he's doing is confronting what he's doing to Social Security, to Medicare, is really an affront to working class Long Islanders, working class Americans. Not to mention the cutbacks he's put forward focusing on cancer research, cutbacks affecting our veterans. I mean, this is really a dangerous time for our country because he's really not being held in check by the Republicans in Congress.
Steve, your thoughts?
Well, you know, I've been both a Democrat and a Republican, so I can see things from both sides. And with Trump, you get very high highs and very low lows. I would have liked to have seen in the speech a softer tone that went toward the independents in the middle, because if he does that more, he can be polling in the 60 percentile range because people like the policy. They love the fact that in just 3 weeks, he's basically closed the border, where the Democrats and Biden said you couldn't do it without legislation. You know, he's putting a curb on the excesses of DEI and the obsession over genderism and all of that stuff. He's putting people back to work. 8% of the workforce in the federal government were showing up to work. They were all at home. So people are liking this. They like, even though they might not like all the intricacies of how DOGE is being carried out, they realize we have a $7 trillion budget, which was just $4.5 trillion before COVID. There's got to be a way to trim that because our debt now is at $37 trillion. Our deficits are running at $2 trillion a year. That cannot be the new normal.
But let's remember,
the public
Steve,
likes that at least there's an emphasis on getting control over this behemoth because our grandchildren are going to suffer and we're going to go bankrupt.
Let's remember, Steve, the result of Donald Trump's proposed tax cuts is going to increase the deficit by over $2 trillion.
Not true.
That's their administration's analysis.
It's false talking point.
Not absolutely true. His attack on Social Security is going to compromise, is going to take away Social Security benefits.
Let me ask you this, Robert. Are Democrats positioning themselves properly to combat the policies that they don't agree with? What we saw on the House floor, do you think it was effective?
Look, Democrats certainly have to be out there, taking the case to the American people, pointing out the falsehoods. When Donald Trump says that, in fact, he points out the fraud on Medicare, he's factually wrong. His own administration acknowledged that. In fact, what he's doing is basically taking away Medicare coverage and Medicare benefits to make way for his tax cuts, which don't benefit the middle class.
Right, Steve, how about how Democrats...
I can just finish the point if I may. Very quickly, what he is doing is not cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. In fact, his first move as president was to get rid of the inspector generals that go after waste, fraud, and abuse.
You've got that across, but I'm asking about the Democrats. How about how the Democrats are positioning them?
Well,
Steve, you've been on both sides of it.
It's a false talking point by Democrats when they say that the tax cuts leads to the deficit. Every time you have tax cuts, whether it was John Kennedy, Ronald Reagan, or back in 2017, more revenue came in to the coffers than before. There's still deficits. That's because both Democrats and Republicans can't stop the spending. But you also have a false talking point, Rich, from the Democrats saying, oh, he's cutting Social Security, Medicaid. You know, Medicaid has gone up by 1/3 since the pandemic, okay? It was supposed to be a stopgap. 1 out of 5 people in America now are on Medicaid. 1 out of 3 New Yorkers are in Medicaid. So you know what Trump and DOGE and the Republicans are saying? We want to take those 7 million men who are able-bodied, who are staying home.
Steve.
If you want Medicaid, you have to work for
You know,
it,
you're using-
just like Clinton did
Let me be clear
back
about
in the
that. We have
90s
30
with
seconds
welfare.
left.
30
Robert, I'll
seconds
give you the
quick.
last word.
The last time we heard that the tax cuts are going to bring money into the coffers
They
and
did.
cut the deficit, it didn't.
Google it. It's absolutely true.
Donald Trump's last tax cut increased the deficit by
Not
$2.5
true.
trillion.
That's because of the spending, not the tax
You know
cuts.
something?
More
You're
revenue came in.
Don't talk.
Google it,
Steve,
folks.
talking over me doesn't make you right.
We don't have enough time.
Let's remember, though, and this is serious. This is a serious matter.
Quickly.
Middle-class Long Islanders, they're going to lose their veterans benefits because he's cutting the veterans workforce by 15%. We're going to lose cancer research funding because he's cutting that back.
All right.
He's not
got
saving money.
3
He's
million
not saving money.
employees.
Listen, we need
Okay.
more time, and maybe you guys need a podcast. This is pretty good.
I like that. What do you say?
Thanks for being on, guys.
You got to be
Appreciate it.
factual, Steve.
Oh, check it out. Google it.
Still to come on Power and Politics, New York City Mayor Eric Adams in the hot seat before